In 2013, we sold our house in the city, packed up our 6 kids, and moved to a tiny home on 30 acres. Our dream was to get back to a simpler, healthier lifestyle. 6 years later, and 3 more kids, we now raise chickens, goats, Great Pyrenees, and try to expand our garden every year.
We are the Cush family. Welcome to our farm.
Everyone, thanks for joining us for this video. A couple things to be aware of. If you like what you're seeing, go ahead and like the video and share it with your friends on your social media. In addition to that, it really helps us out if you subscribe to our channel. So if you've liked what you've seen on our channel so far, go ahead and subscribe to it. That way you get regular notifications. The last thing that really helps us out, if you do this on each video, it really helps push us up the rankings. And so if you could, underneath the video, make a comment down there of your favorite part of the video with the timestamp. So tell us exactly what part of the video you like and why you like it. And that will really help us out. So hope you guys enjoy the video. See you next time.
Okay, the first soil test that we're going to do are some preliminary soil tests to determine if the sites are good candidates for the other soil tests. So this area is in our garden. This is a spot we haven't gardened yet. We've expanded. We've been covering it with pine shavings from our chicken coop, so it should hopefully be moist and have good texture to it. So the first test is going to be the smell test. So you take a handful of soil, and it says thoroughly smell it. Go like this and smell all the parts of it. Okay, if it smells sour, putrid, or chemically, then it's not a good site for a soil test.
It does not smell that way, by the way.
If it has no smell, or if it has an earthy, sweet, or fresh smell, then it is a good candidate, and that smelled earthy and kind of sweet.
Very earthy, yes. I think this is the most earthy soil that I've smelled today.
Okay, this is the squeeze test. As you can see, the soil's sticking together nicely. It's not too dry. If it is, you need to water it and wait until tomorrow to do your test. It's not too wet. It's not dripping. There's not standing water. So, there you go. Our next soil test is called the drainage test. So the purpose is to see how well the water drains through your soil. So you put an empty food tin in here. We cut the bottom off down halfway into our soil, and you pour the water around the edge of the tin, trying to stay away from the middle. This is 500 milliliters of water. So you set a timer from the time you start pouring, and then you wait for the water to seep down until just the top of the soil is glistening, not submerged. And then you record the time. So the water drained in about 9 minutes, a little less. This is a little bit too fast. If your water drains between 10 and 30 minutes, that's a good amount of moisture in the soil and loose soil. Less than 10 minutes means that this is good for dry desert type plants. More than 30 minutes means the soil's holding too much moisture for too long. So this is the earthworm test. We're going to dig a hole approximately about 1 foot wide, 1 foot long, 1 foot deep, hopefully. Not sure we'll be able to get that deep here. And then we'll put that in here and sift through it to find earthworms. So we finished digging our hole. We didn't quite get a foot down. We only got about 8.5 inches down. And now we're going to sift through this dirt in our bucket looking for worms. So we finished sifting through all the soil. We didn't find any worms. Worms are an indicator that you have good, healthy soil. You want to find at least 10 worms in your 1 by 1 by 1 hole. Okay, for our next test, we're going to do the vinegar and baking soda test to test the soil pH.
Go.
So the supplies you'll need are baking soda, vinegar, distilled water, a cup of soil from your test site, and 2 jars. So you'll put 2 teaspoons of soil in each jar. In the first jar, you're going to pour half a cup of vinegar. If it fizzes, then that means your soil is alkaline with a pH of 7 to 8. And we can see in some bubbles in here, some fizzing happening here. In your second cup, you're going to pour distilled water over your 2 teaspoons of soil, just making it muddy. Then you're going to sprinkle baking soda on it. If it fizzes, that means your soil is acidic. Ours is not fizzing. So that means if it fizzes, your soil would be in a pH between 5 and 6. I don't know, it sounds fizzy. It's hard to tell because it's such a small amount. Sounds fizzy. So now we don't know. We have 2 fizzy solutions. So if your soil fizzes with the vinegar, that means you have a pH between 7 and 8, which would be alkaline. If your soil fizzes with the distilled water and baking soda, that means your pH is between 5 and 6, which would be more acidic. A neutral pH of 7 would not fizz at all. So I don't know, ours appears to be fizzing with both, so now I'm totally confused. I don't know if this worked or not. This next test is the red cabbage test, to test for pH. You'll need 4 to 6 red cabbage leaves, distilled water, and your soil. Okay, so the first step is to take 4 to 6 red cabbage leaves and boil it in 2 cups of distilled water and let it simmer for 10 minutes. Then you're going to let it sit for 30 minutes off the heat. It's important to use distilled water because your tap water or well water can affect the pH. Here are our boiled cabbage leaves. If you want to see what they look like when they're done, they're kind of cool. Lots of different colors. And here's our cabbage water. So it should be a bluish purple. The next step, you're going to take 2 teaspoons of your soil and you're going to pour in your cabbage water. It says a few inches. It's important not to use too much soil or it will turn your water a grayish black color. Then you're going to stir this up and wait for 20 to 30 minutes.
I think Job wants some cabbage.
Okay, so we let the cabbage leaves, or the soil, excuse me, steep in our cabbage water for 20 to 30 minutes, and it came out really, really dark. It was difficult to see the color. So we poured some of the water off and diluted it with distilled water so that we could see the color a little bit better. The video is distorting some of the colors. This looks more of a sea blue green, which would indicate, according to my notes, that our soil is more alkaline. However, we did a controlled where we took our cabbage water and diluted it with distilled water to see if that affected anything, and it is also a sea blue green. And after pouring off lots of this dark, what we thought was dark purple bluish water, it is more of a blue greenish water. The sunlight also helps us see the color a little bit better versus in the house with the lamplight. So the interesting thing is our daughter cooked the cabbage leaves with our well water, so it may have affected the pH before we did our soil test. So here's the last of our cabbage water mixed with our well water again, and it turns it a purple, more of a purple color. So it's interesting. Purple would indicate more neutral. A dark bluish purple would indicate more neutral. So likely our well water is affecting our experiment here, and we may have to do it again.
Okay, so basically after an afternoon of testing our soil, we've confirmed a couple things that we already knew. So the drainage test told us that our soil drains very quickly, which we already knew, which isn't necessarily a good thing in this particular case. The second thing that we confirmed in our test is that we don't have any earthworms. Largely, I think because our soil is very compacted and it's not very aerated. So those are two things we already kind of suspected before we started today.
Then we did our pH tests with the vinegar and the baking soda. Both of them fizzed, which likely means that there was an error with the test. Maybe it's unreliable. This is the first time we've ever done this test, and they both shouldn't be fizzing. It should be one or the other. With our red cabbage test, we likely suspect that our well water affected the test because we were unaware that well water was used in boiling the cabbage leaves. This is our first time to do any kind of soil tests here on our property.
And we are clearly not chemists. So
but it was a great learning experience. It was kind of fun and interesting to look at different ways of testing your soil.
And we are going to redo the cabbage test with distilled water. So we will post those results. So keep an eye out for that. But what we would like you guys to do is to try the experiments yourself and see if maybe you get different results, and then post your results as well. So if you like the video, like we said, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. That helps us out a lot. And share the video where you can. And we'll see you guys next time.